Just kidding. We're going to start over because that was not good. Hey, welcome back to the Oak and Ember podcast, ladies and gentlemen. So glad you're here. I hope you are having a wonderful winter day. I mean, it is nice here, overcast. I don't have to deal too much with lighting today, which is really nice. And I'm trying what it feels like the third or fourth attempt at a setting where I feel comfortable enough to talk without worrying about lights and seats and where all the things plug in and all that stuff. There are a lot of growing pains I've discovered when it comes to making a podcast. And in some ways that's really fitting for today because I don't have a how to make your life better in 3 easy steps kind of episode today, or how to grow or improve or anything. Really today, and what I intend to do is more of a, oh, that's what that is. Sorry. That window goes into my son's room, and I can hear him building his Legos. It was a little distracting. But today really is more of an external process of where I'm at in this journey. And originally, I was just going to keep this relegated to my journal. But one of the people I pay attention to is Gary Vaynerchuk, and he talks about the difference between like fake it till you make it and bringing people along on the journey. And I wanted today to be more of that. Like, where am I on the journey? Because I think, or at least I hope, that it's beneficial to other people out there who are looking for resources, or other people who are talking about what it's like to go through significant life changes, a metamorphosis or transformation, or whatever word you want to use. And I hope that this is valuable because this isn't a like how-to. I hope that when this episode is over that there's, a light at the end of the tunnel and a rainbow and a pot of gold and all that fun, like positive metaphor at the end. But I honestly don't know where today's going to go because it's more of just a discussion of what it's like to leave behind things that no longer serve you, but not have reached a point on the journey where things feel normal. And for a lot of people, at least I think there's a lot of people out there who are experiencing something similar to this. In a lot of ways, COVID, when it started in 2020, it really cracked open the foundations of things that needed to be examined, that needed to be discussed, that needed to be evaluated or looked at. And I'm in that place. And so I hope that today's ramblings or external processing is a blessing to those out there looking for somebody else who's maybe like 2 feet further down the journey. And you're starting to question some of the things that used to be just automatic for you. And you're wondering, how on earth do I do that? So that's where we're going today. I don't know if you can see this. This is my new mug. This mug is super cool. It was a gift. It was one of those really cool gifts that I did not expect. I really appreciate this friend who gave it to me. And it keeps my coffee super warm when I'm outside. There's a mustache hair on there we go. Okay. See, I told you, like, this is unedited and unpolished. And I hope that's okay. Before we jump in, let's take care of our housekeeping, our major important things that we got to do. The whole purpose behind this podcast is to help people live life to the fullest, to unplug from the matrix, to break apart from the systems that are attempting to turn us into monetary batteries, to perpetuate the system that makes a few people really well off and the rest of us just consumeristic minions. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of things about America that I'm super thankful for. There's a lot of things about society that I'm super thankful for. There are a lot of things about being a human being on this planet and this time that I'm really thankful for. But there's a lot of stuff that I'm starting to get really frustrated with, and I want to help people break apart from those things that are keeping them in their copper top holding cells. I want to unplug from the matrix. I want to unplug from the things that are keeping us from living life to the fullest. But in order to do that, I can't do it alone. So I need people out there to subscribe, like the videos, comment. Like, what do you want to hear in these episodes? Where are you in your journey, and what tools do you need in order to go further? What questions do you have about life and philosophy and theology and the things that we need to be talking about so that we can do life better? That's the whole goal of the podcast. And if you're in for that, man, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're listening to this on iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and review. Leave us some comments. Do all those things to help perpetuate what is hopefully a beneficial part of your week. And I'm trying new things. I'm going to start putting these out on a different day and at slightly different times, and sync this stuff up with what I'm doing on social media so that there's more of an organic nature to how we're doing things and talking about things and examining what it means to do life as a human right now. My artwork is specifically focused on that topic. How do we be the best humans we can be? And what is it like to be a human right now in society? So wherever you are, like, subscribe, follow us on TikTok at the Oak and Ember Podcast. Get on there, leave us some comments, follow along, stick with us on the journey. Because, man, I really believe in the next 2 to 5 years, this thing could blow up and we could be helping people live life with such joy and liveliness. And that's what I want to help people unplug. I want to help young people unplug especially. Because if we can help the next generation unplug from the consumeristic matrix-like capitalist system, right? Again, I've said this before, capitalism is a great system. It's far better than some of the other stuff that's out there. But it's definitely got a long way to go before it's truly beneficial to people as a whole. So that's where we're at. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave us a 5-star rating review, and help us grow this podcast so that we can reach more people and help more people. It's like digital life coaching. I want to do more of that. I want to do a lot more of that because I've just got such a fire for helping people live well. So that's where we're at today. So we're just going to ramble a little bit for the next few minutes to talk about kind of where I'm at in the journey, where my family's at, what we're thinking about, what we're doing, and how that impacts what we're doing here on the podcast, what we're doing here in life, and where we're going. A big part of this, it's interesting because when I get to a Saturday, I've been running so hard Sunday through Friday that when I get to Saturday and I get still, the abundance of thoughts flood through my brain and my spirit, and I start thinking about all the things. And I think if I were going to try and organize, if I were going to attempt to put some ducks in a row today, it's one of my favorite things to start with when I'm doing like a teaching or something in public. It's like I've tried real hard to get some ducks and put them in a row, and a lot of times it just goes squirrels at a rave, and that's okay. Oh man. But I think if I were going to organize this, what I would say is that we're going to work this thing out from the physical to the emotional to the spiritual. Because ultimately I want to end on the spiritual, because I think that has a big part of life as a human. How are we interacting with the bigger narrative of the world? And if you're not a spiritual person, I get it. I understand. If you're in the atheist camp or agnostic camp, I understand. And what I would challenge you to do is just stick around, because I think what we're going to talk about would benefit you, would challenge you, would encourage you to look at life in a different way and see that there is more to life than what we kind of have is this like nihilistic pointlessness that I hear a lot from people in the atheistic camp. So physically, man, I'm in the best place I think I've ever been physically, at least for a really long time. Definitely since I started having kids. I should say that differently. Since my wife and I started having kids, because she did all the having. I've just helped do the parenting, which is necessary. We have to have men in the house. Golly. Like culturally, that's the big thing that bothers me. And I'm not going to camp on this for a minute, but dadgum, we need some good men. I work with kids all the time. You know, all these pundits and all these leftists and all these progressives talk about gender equality and transgenderism and all this other stuff. And underlying all of that is the idea that men aren't necessary, and that's bull bleep. Come work with me at a school for one day and tell me we don't have a crisis of the manless society. We got to fix that. We need good men in their homes. Wow. I just got really far off on a tangent there. I told you we wasn't going to take long. We were going to go squirrels at a rave. So here's the thing. Physically, I'm in the best place that I've ever been. And one of the things that has brought about that transition is not just the strength training that I'm doing, not just some of the cardio or the sauna or the cold exposure, although all of those things have a benefit. Meditation has a benefit. I'm going to talk about that in the spiritual aspect of this episode. But a couple of weeks ago, I was watching Down to Earth with Zac Efron. And see, I haven't even talked about this publicly. Like, I don't think anybody that I work with knows this. I know my parents do, but I haven't talked about it with anybody else because I don't want to be one of those people that uses it as a prop in order to bolster what I'm doing on social media or on the YouTube or on the internet and the digital life coaching that I want to do. So I don't want to be in that place, but it is a part of the journey that I'm on, and so I do need to talk about it. But I was watching this episode, and you know, in strength training, there's a big emphasis on protein because in order to maximize your protein synthesis, in order to grow new muscle, you have to have protein. So I was chowing down on some animal protein, man. I was eating anywhere from 180 to 195 grams of protein a day because I had bought into the underlying like 1 pound per kilo per 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And it was interesting because I wasn't feeling super great all the time. I was having a lot of acne breakouts on my legs and on my face. And that bothered me. And so I was watching this. I didn't get into this documentary thing from Zac Efron with any intentionality. I saw it. It looked cool. I like stuff about the planet. I love the planet. Love creation. I love the created thing. I love creatures. Love animals. So I was just checking it out. And they did an episode where they went to Sardinia. And the guy made a comment about animal protein, high intake of animal protein being linked to cancer. Now, I'm not a doctor. All I'm doing is quoting what happened in the moment. I'm not trying to tell you anything scientifically, medically, none of that. This is not medical. No, none of that. But they made that statement. I'd never heard that statement before, and honestly, it freaked me out because cancer scares the ever-loving out of my soul. Cancer scares me. There's no history of cancer in my family. There's no history of heart disease or any of those other things in my family. And still, the idea of cancer terrifies me. So I heard that comment about animal protein. And that sent me spiraling into like research mode, which happens a lot of times. You know, it's in Enneagram language, I would say that's where I'm drawing really heavily on my 5 wing because I want to know all the things. And I won't feel safe until I know all the things. And that's not healthy, but it was where I was at in the moment. So I started doing that, and then I remembered the Game Changers documentary film from James Wilkes. So I watched that again because the first time I tried to watch it, I wasn't in a place to hear it. I wasn't in a place to receive it. But now I was because was tired all the time. Didn't matter. Cold exposure, meditation, working out of the gym, doing all the right things. I was still tired. Now, I attributed that to the fact that I have two small kids. And like last night, I didn't sleep through the night because my kids needed me. But I watched Game Changers, and I watched it all the way through the end. And it shook me a little bit. And I thought, oh, man. So I think this is day 9, day 10 of eating exclusively whole food plant-based. It's a lot of words. In other words, I just don't eat animals anymore. And when I made that decision, honestly, like all the other vegan people on the internet and on YouTube, I felt a really great comfort in the fact that I don't have to eat living things anymore. And I have researched the tar out of this subject. And all I'll tell you is if you're interested in learning more about this, where I would point you in the direction of is go check out the Rich Roll podcast. Go check out Simon Hill and his podcast. Look at the work from Nimai Delgado. There's some life things there I don't necessarily agree with. But when it comes to taking care of your body and the proof within the plants, those three guys have been tremendously helpful. And if any of those three guys happen to see this episode, thank you for the work you're doing because it has helped me tremendously. So 9 days exclusively plant-based, and I've never felt so good. I've got more energy. I'm sleeping better. Normally when I get to my painting sessions, my creative sessions at the end of the day, I have to make myself sit down to paint because I'm so tired. But now I'm going to bed a little concerned that I won't sleep because I've still got so much energy. And there's a process. It's not perfect. It's not like that all the time, but it's definitely more like that more. Now, the reason I talk about this is because it's freaking hard. It's daggum hard to change everything you know to be true about nutrition, everything you know to be true about the way of eating and moving in this world. But once you know stuff, you can't unknow it. So it started with that Down to Earth documentary. And then I watched Game Changers. And then yesterday I watched Cowspiracy. And that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And at this point, I am convinced that the best way for me, let me be really clear about this, the best way for me and my family to operate in the world is to be exclusively plant-based. Now, I'm not going to go picket meat factories and egg factories and all that stuff. But I am going to raise awareness about how we as human beings might need to evolve further to change how we exist on this planet. And I just feel good physically. And I'm tracking here's the deal. If you're listening and you're concerned, I'm tracking my food, I'm tracking my nutrients, I'm tracking my macros, I'm relearning how to view food, I'm relearning how to eat, and all of those things are true right now. And I'm being really careful. I didn't just stop eating meat and start eating lettuce. That's a stupid way to go about it. Bless you if you went about it that way. I'm being really careful. But I feel phenomenal. Even my wife, who's been doing it with me. That's the thing. You got. I don't know how people do it in a split household. But my wife, who has chronic neck and back pain, is seeing relief from her pain in ways she's never experienced before. And it's just really cool to continue growing and to see that our family can do things differently from the system. I'm getting choked up about it. It's just awesome. It's just great. I don't know any other words to put it that way. So that's where I'm at physically. I'm relearning how to physically be in the world, how to fuel my body in a way that actually gives me energy and doesn't take it away, that makes me feel good and doesn't make me feel like I need to take a nap after I eat lunch. Feel freaking awesome, but it is dadgum hard. It is hard to relearn what used to be automatic for 30 plus years of your life. So there's that. Now, emotionally, right, the emotions for me are the bridge between the physical and the spiritual. And I will say at this point in my 39 years of life, I am emotionally more stable than I've been in a long time. And a lot of that is because of how I'm engaging with the world spiritually. And all I want to say about emotions is that your emotions are fantastic signposts along the path of your journey. Your signposts are telling you how you're doing. And for the men out there who don't know how to tap into their feelings and their emotions, you need to. You need to find a way. Get with somebody that is a healthy, wholehearted male and ask them how they did it. Get with a counselor or a therapist and have them help you find what you need in order to be whole and healthy when it comes to your emotions. And I'm going to get into more of this with other podcasts, but your emotions are telling you how you're doing. They should not at any point control how you operate in the world, but they should be like warning lights on the dashboard that tell you how you're doing and if you're in danger emotionally. That's all I'm going to say about emotions, because the last part is where I want to camp for the last few minutes and talk about the spiritual. As hard as the physical part, like learning how to eat plant-based, how to build muscle, how to train, how to live, how to do life in an exclusively plant-based nutritional ideal, the spiritual has been that much harder. Because we've stepped out of institutionalized Christianity. And for that, I am deeply thankful and freaking lonely. Because it feels like in the land of two churches on every corner, when you don't have a church body and yet you love God and you love Jesus and you love the Holy Spirit and you love the 3 in 1, you love the 1 in 3, it is really hard how to have a place to belong in the world. And I'm really struggling with that, honestly. And I talk about that because I think there's a lot of people out there right now who are super frustrated or super downhearted or lonely or fill in the blank with whatever negative emotion. Because the church is just so broken and frustrated and controlling, and I just can't do it anymore. I can't keep going and watching this religious empire building where all of these organizations are trying to carve out their little piece of property and talk about how I'm right and you're wrong and I'm not, but you are going to hell and all of these things, and God loves you, but he's condemning all the people. Like, I can't even with the evangelical church anymore. I just can't. But then where does that leave us? To what community do we belong to? Like, it's fine to say you belong to the human race, but like that's a lot of people. And it's a lot of people to try and figure out how, like, where do we belong? Because if I go into a traditional American church and I say, hey, I'm working on energy healing and I'm working on meditation and chanting and certain rituals and other things, people will look at me and label me as pagan or damned or lost or fill in the blank. You know, like, my kids have had a hard week sleeping this week. It really feels like we're under a spiritual attack because there's just stuff going on at 2 o'clock in the morning that we haven't had trouble with in a really long time. And if I talk about that in the church, they're going to say, oh, we're going to pray for you because something in your life must be wrong in order for these bad things to happen. Now, I know that's not every Christian in America. That's not every church. But it's enough of them that people are noticing. More and more people are leaving the church, and I don't know where they're going. Because if I did know where they're going, I'd go with them. Because I'm tired. I'm tired of always wondering about my salvation. I'm always tired of wondering about whether or not I'm meeting the checklists, doing things right, dressing the right way. And it seems like the God that's being offered in that particular expression of spirituality is a God that cares more about my behavior than my soul. And I don't believe that is God. I believe God loves so richly and deeply. And yes, I agree with N.T. Wright. Our character matters. But it matters because we're an expression of the divine. We're an expression of God. We are His children, and how we move in the world should dictate that. And yet it seems like people are more interested in sitting on a pew than they are in actually living well. And we experience this, like we've visited churches before and we've connected with people, and as long as we're there sitting next to them on their pew, they care about where we are. But when we said, hey, this isn't for us, we're going to go explore other things, we never heard from those people again. And yeah, we've got some hurt feelings about that. Love your neighbor as yourself seems really fine as long as you agree with whatever particular religious bent is being taught in that church. And so we're out there in the wilderness trying to figure out what it looks like to walk with God. We're trying to figure out what does it mean to love God and love our neighbor as ourselves. The two greatest commandments. Here's the deal. I think there's a lot of things out there we could learn from other religions and other forms of spirituality. I think there's a lot to learn out there. I do also still believe that God, as seen through Jesus Christ, is the ultimate expression of love in the universe. That there is a God, and God cares very much about how we are and where we are in the world. But I also think there is so much more to God than what is being offered in institutionalized American church. And so the struggle that I am having is, where do we belong in the world? And how do we connect with other people who are on a similar journey of exploring the beauty of God without being tied to a religious institution who's trying to manage our behavior? So that's where I'm at. My favorite character in a fiction story is Musashi, Miyamoto Musashi. And there's a quote in the book where he says, I feel as though I am on an endless path, that the mountain I'm climbing goes on forever. That's a paraphrase, not literal quote. And that's exactly how this journey feels. The moment I feel like I've stepped up somewhere, the moment I realize there's so much ahead of me. And I don't have any answers for any of this. I don't have the solutions. All I know is that the journey is worth continuing. It is worth walking this path. And we will continue it towards wholeness and healthiness and wholehearted living and divine expression of true spirituality. So I just invite you on that journey, wherever you're at. Comment below, share your journey, connect with me on social media. Let's talk about this and keep this discussion going so that we can create a place of belonging for people who do not feel like they belong in the American church, but who are longing to experience the love of God. That's my hope. And somewhere I hope in all of these ramblings you were blessed by this today. Have a great rest of the day, my friends. And until next time, get out there and live life to the fullest. Cheers.